The classroom was silent, not the ordinary kind of silence, the nervous kind. Rows of alien students sat in curved tiers beneath the glowing ceiling of Hall C-17 inside the Galactic Academy of Unified Civilizations. A species from over 40 star systems were present, scaled, feathered, crystalline, and forms that barely resembled life at all. At the center of the hall stood Professor Sarthal, tall, armored, 4 yellow eyes glowing with cruel amusement, a war veteran of the Zerathi Dominion. And today's lecture topic was written across the floating holo board. In primitive species, why some civilizations failed. Sarthal slowly paced in front of the class. Then he said something that made the room grow colder. I once killed a human with my bare claws. A few students shifted uncomfortably. Others leaned forward with curiosity. Sarthal continued proudly. They called their planet Earth a pathetic blue rock filled with fragile creatures who barely escaped their own gravity. Some of the alien students chuckled. Enough. They scream loudly. Sarthal added, smirking in, but they break easily, and more louder follow. But in the back row, one student did not laugh. She simply sat quietly, calm eyes, a human girl. Her name was Maya Carter, and she had not moved once since the lecture began. Scene 2 of the Galactic Academy. The Galactic Academy was one of the most prestigious institutions in the known universe. Young minds from hundreds of species gathered here to learn diplomacy, science, warfare theory, and galactic history. But humans were new. Earth had only recently joined the interstellar community after accidentally broadcasting radio signals powerful enough to be detected across several star systems. To many advanced species, humanity looked unimpressive. Primitive technology, chaotic governments, a violent history, and a planet classified by the Galactic Survey as a Class 12 Deathworld. But most aliens didn't understand what that meant. They assumed it meant dangerous for humans. Not that it meant humans were the ones who survived it. Hundreds of seats curved upward in massive tiers, each designed for a different species. Some filled with towering reptilian bodies, others with floating crystalline minds suspended in anti-gravity fields, and some with beings that looked more like living shadows than students. Above them, the ceiling shimmered with artificial stars slowly rotating to mimic the calm of deep space. But tonight, the room did not feel calm. It felt tense because at the center of the hall stood Professor Sar, a towering war veteran of the Zerathi Dominion, his armored hide scarred by decades of battle across the galaxy. 4 glowing eyes swept across the class like searchlights, and the heavy claws at the ends of his arms tapped slowly against the metal podium. Every student knew his reputation. Sarthal did not simply teach military history. He had lived it. Entire star systems had burned during the wars he fought in. And when he spoke, most species listened carefully. The holographic board behind him flickered to life, projecting the title of today's lesson the air in bright blue symbols. Primitive civilizations. Why some species never survive. A few students shifted uncomfortably. Some leaned forward with curiosity, but none of them spoke because Professor Sarthal had begun pacing. Deliberately, the sound of his armored footsteps echoed across the chamber. Across the galaxy, he said, his voice deep and heavy, there are thousands of developing civilizations. A rotating hologram appeared above the podium. Images of young species, early cities, primitive spacecraft. Most of them, he continued, believe they will one day join the greater galactic community. A few students nodded. That was the dream of nearly every emerging species, to reach the stars, to become part of something larger. Sarthal stopped pacing. Then his upper lip curled slightly. But most of them, he said, the hologram shifted again. Civilizations collapsing, planets burning, extinction events. The class watched silently. What? Sarthal asked. No one answered. His glowing eyes moved across the students. Inferior biology, fragile psychology, and inability to adapt to the brutal reality of the universe. He tapped a claw against the podium. And sometimes, he added calmly, they simply meet the wrong enemy. The lights dimmed slightly as the hologram changed again. Now it showed a single planet. Blue, cloud covered in oceans and green land masses. Several students leaned closer. Most of them had seen this world before, because recently it had become a topic of growing discussion across the academy. Farthal gestured toward it with one long claw. This planet, he said, is called Earth. A quiet murmur spread through the hall. Some students tilted their heads. Others whispered to one another. Earth was famous for only one reason. It belonged to the humans, one of the newest species to make contact with the galactic community, and also one of the most controversial. Sarthal turned slowly toward the class. They call themselves resilient, he said. They claim their species survived countless disasters to reach space. He snorted softly. But every young civilization says the same thing. A reptilian student near the front raised a claw. Professor, isn't Earth classified as a death world? Several students murmured again. Death worlds were rare, planets so violent and unstable that most species could not survive there for long. Farthal waved the question away dismissively. Yes, technically, though the term is often exaggerated. The hologram zoomed in on Earth's surface, storm systems, mountain ranges, deep oceans. A chaotic ecosystem does not make a species powerful. Sarthal continued. If anything, it proves their environment is poorly balanced. Some students chuckled quietly, but the professor was not finished. His eyes narrowed slightly as he leaned forward against the podium. In fact, he said, I once encountered humans personally during the outer colony conflicts. The room grew a little quieter. War stories from Sarthal were never boring. They were usually brutal. He let the silence stretch for several seconds. Then he smiled, a slow, predatory smile. I killed one of them, he said. The words landed in the room like a stone dropped into still water. Ripples of reaction spread through the students. Some leaned forward eagerly. Others looked uneasy. Humans were technically members of the galactic community now, but many older species still viewed them with suspicion or curiosity. Sarthal straightened his massive frame. Enough. It was during a small skirmish near a mining outpost. He continued casually. A unit encountered a group of human soldiers attempting to defend the Feni facility. Aliphic battlefield appeared above the podium. Smoke. Damaged structures, small figures in armored suits, primitive weapons, Sarthal said with a faint laugh, projectile firearms. A few students made surprise sounds. Projectile weapons were considered ancient technology by most advanced civilizations. And yet, Farthal continued, they charged us anyway. He folded his arms. Our 5 humans against 20 Zerathi warriors. A gaze moved through the lecture hall. Even for reckless species, that was an absurd disadvantage. Farthal's eyes gleamed. They fought loudly. He said, very emotional creatures, humans. The hologram showed flashes of combat, explosions, running figures. But bravery, Sarthal continued calmly, does not compensate for biological weakness. He leaned forward again. I personally killed one. Several students shifted in their seats. Some were impressed. Others looked disturbed by the casual pride in his voice. Farthal did not seem to notice, or perhaps he simply did not care, because his gaze had started moving through the room again, scanning the students, studying their reactions. Then suddenly, his eyes stopped, locked on something in the back row. The professor tilted his head slightly, and a thin smile returned to his face. He said slowly. How fortunate. Dozens of students turned to see what he was looking at. There, sitting quietly among the towering alien bodies, was a single human student. A young girl, calm expression, hands folded neatly on the desk in front of her. She had been silent the entire lecture, watching, listening. Now, Professor Sarthal rested both claws on the podium. Well then, he said, voice thick with amusement, perhaps we have the perfect witness. The entire class stared at the human girl, and the tension in the room tightened like a wire ready to snap. The Galactic Academy of Unified Civilizations floated in orbit around a pale blue star at the edge of a neutral system, far from the politics, wars, and territorial borders of the major galactic powers. From space, the Academy looked less like a station and more like a living constellation. Vast silver rings rotated slowly around a glowing central core, while Hundreds of docking platforms extended outward like petals of a metal flower. Starships of every imaginable shape drift in organized traffic lanes around it. Sleek triangular vessels, bulbous ornate craft grown rather than built. Crystalline ships that shimmered like frozen lightning for thousands of young minds across the galaxy. This place was a destination that could shape the future of their species. Enough inside the Academy gravity atmosphere, and lighting constantly shifted depending on which section of the station you entered. Some corridors were filled with humid fog for amphibious species. Others were dry and warm like deserts. Entire wings were pressurized with exotic gases that would instantly kill most other life forms. But one area of the Academy was designed for something even more complicated. A place where dozens of species could exist in the same room at once. That place was Hall C-17, one of the Academy's largest multi-species lecture chambers. The room was enormous, nearly the size of a small stadium. Instead of traditional rows of desks, the chamber was arranged in wide, circular tiers that climbed upward around a central teaching platform. Each tier had been carefully engineered to accommodate radically different biological needs. Some seating areas contained pools of warm liquid where aquatic students floated peacefully while projecting their voices through translator fields. Other sections were filled with thick perches for avian species whose wings spanned several meters when extended. There were cushioned platforms for gelatinous life forms, magnetic surfaces for metallic-based organisms, and hovering anti-gravity nodes for creatures that could not physically rest on solid ground. Soft glowing lines ran across the floor and walls, marking safe zones where atmospheric balances overlapped without harming anyone. Above the chamber stretched a vast dome made of transparent crystal alloy. Instead of showing the darkness of space, the ceiling projected a slow, moving starfield designed to mimic the calm emptiness between galaxies. Gentle light pulsed from distant holographic suns, bathing the room in a soft glow that prevented the harsher lighting conditions from disturbing sensitive species. Despite the peaceful design, the room never felt quiet. Dozens of languages filled the air every day. Clicks, chirps, vibrations, psychic pulses translated into sound waves, and even bursts of color from bioluminescent communication. Every student wore or carried a universal translator node, a small device that converted alien speech patterns into understandable language. The result was something strange but incredible, a place where beings from worlds separated by thousands of light years could actually learn together. On this particular day, the chamber was nearly full. A tall reptilian student from the desert world of Koresh adjusted the protective film over his eyes as the room lighting brightened slightly. Nearby, a cluster of 3 crystalline entities floated above their assigned gravity nodes, their bodies chiming softly whenever they shifted position. An insectoid student nearly 2 meters tall care-folded 4 of its limbs beneath its body, while using the remaining pair to operate a floating datapod. Enough. Its compound eyes constantly flickered between different spectrums of light invisible to most other species. Closer to the center tiers, a group of avian students from a low gravity moon balanced gracefully on wide metallic perches while whispering quietly among themselves. Their feathers shimmered in metallic blues and purples as they moved. Not far away, a gelatinous creature inside a hovering containment sphere slowly changed colors while processing information displayed on a holographic screen. Its thoughts were translated through a steady mechanical voice that repeated everything it said in calm, neutral tones. Even the air itself carried subtle differences. Certain areas of the room were slightly warmer, others cooler, all carefully calibrated so no species felt completely uncomfortable. It was chaotic and yet somehow organized, because that was the purpose of the Galactic Academy, to prepare the next generation of leaders, scientists, diplomats, and explorers for a galaxy filled with differences far greater than anything their homeworlds could have imagined. Many students arrived here believing their species was powerful, advanced, superior, but the Academy had a way of changing that. When a being from a methane ocean world sat beside someone born under crushing gravity, or when a peaceful herbivore species studied war tactics next to predators that had conquered multiple star systems, Perspective shifted very quickly. Despite all the diversity present in Hall C-17, one particular species remained rare among the student body: humans. Earth had only recently joined the wider galactic community. Enough. Their technology was considered young compared to civilizations that had traveled the stars for thousands of years. Their governments were fragmented, their history filled with wars, and their biology strangely aggressive compared to most intelligent species. Many alien societies still viewed them with curiosity, others with caution, and some with quiet disdain. Which was why in the back row of the massive lecture hall, one particular student sat mostly unnoticed. A young human girl occupied a standard gravity seat designed for medium-sized bipedal species, a simple desk surrounded by much larger alien forms. Compared to many of the towering creatures around her, she looked almost fragile. Her dark hair was tied back neatly. Her posture was calm and still. A small data pad glowed faintly in front of her as she reviewed the lecture notes being projected across the room. Around her, alien students continued their quiet conversations, clicking, chirping, humming, and whispering in translated voices. Some of them occasionally glanced in her direction. Humans were still a curiosity here, a species from a distant blue planet that had somehow managed to survive long enough to reach the stars. Most aliens didn't quite know what to think of them yet. Enough. Some believed they were clever but primitive. Others assumed they were reckless and emotional. And a few simply dismissed them as unimportant. But the Academy had a reputation for revealing truths that many civilizations preferred not to think about. Because when dozens of species studied the same history, shared the same classroom, and listened to the same stories of war, survival, and evolution, sometimes the galaxy learned something surprising about itself, and sometimes it learned something even more surprising about humans. Now, the arrogant alien teacher, the teacher openly insults humans, calling them weak, primitive, and unworthy of space travel. In a hundred world, do not another point. The conversations across Hall 17 slowly faded as students noticed the towering Zerathi War veteran approaching the central platform. His armor, like scales, reflected dim starfield lighting above, and the scars across his thick hide were visible even from the upper tiers of the chamber. Told a story of battles fought across distant systems, wars many of the students had only read about in historical records. When Sarthal reached the podium, he did not greet the class, he simply stood there. 4 glowing yellow eyes scanned the room slowly, studying the dozens of alien species seated in the circular tires. Some students straightened nervously under his gaze, others looked down at their data pads. Sarthal enjoyed that reaction. Fear, he believed, was a sign of proper respect. Finally, he placed one massive claw on the edge of the podium. The metal creaked slightly under the pressure. The holographic board behind him flickered to life. Large glowing text appeared in the air. Primitive civilizations, a study in evolutionary failure. A low murmur passed through the chamber. Several students leaned forward with interest. Others exchanged uncertain glances. The title alone suggested that today's lecture would not be particularly diplomatic. Sarthal began pacing slowly across the central platform, across the galaxy. He said in a deep, controlled voice, "Countless intelligent species emerge every few thousand cycles." As he spoke, a series of holographic images appeared above him. Young civilizations building their first cities, launching early spacecraft, exploring the boundaries of their solar systems. Many of them, Sarthal continued, believe they are destined for greatness. He paused and let out a quiet, humorless chuckle. But the universe is not kind to optimism. The hologram shifted. Some civilizations collapsed into war. Others were wiped out by natural disasters or biological catastrophes. Evolution, he said, is not a fair process. It rewards strength, adaptation, efficiency. His glowing eyes moved slowly across the classroom. And it eliminates weakness. The images disappeared, replaced by a rotating hologram of a blue planet surrounded by white clouds. Earth. Several students immediately recognized it. Some whispered quietly among themselves. Sarthal stopped pacing and turned toward the projection. This world, he said, tapping the air beside it with one claw, is the home of a species that recently forced its way into the galactic stage. His voice carried a faint tone of amusement. They called themselves humans. A few reptilian students snorted quietly. Others simply watched the hologram with curiosity. Humans were still relatively unknown to most civilizations. Their technology was barely advanced enough to be considered interstellar, and their political systems were famously unstable. Atsar folded his arms behind his back. The humans claim their species is resilient. He continued. He tells stories about surviving wars, plagues, and planetary disasters. He shook his head slowly. Every primitive civilization believes its struggles make it special. The hologram zoomed closer to Earth's surface, and mountain ranges, oceans, storm systems swirling across continents. To inexperienced observers, Sarthal said, "This world appears dangerous." He turned slightly toward the students. The Galactic Survey has even classified it as a death world. A few students shifted in their seats. Death worlds were not taken lightly in Galactic's planets with unstable climates, violent ecosystems, and extremely aggressive life forms were rare and difficult to study. But Sarthal waved one dismissive claw through the hologram, an exaggerated classification. He deactivated the image with a sharp motion. A chaotic environment does not make a species powerful. If anything, he said coldly, it proves that their ecosystem never evolved proper balance. Some students chuckled quietly, encouraged by the reaction. Sarthal continued, "Humans are a young species with primitive technology and a history of constant internal conflict." And another hologram appeared, human armies fighting each other across different time periods. Enough, they have spent most of their existence killing their own kind. But he leaned forward slightly, claws resting on the podium again. And now they believe they are ready to explore the galaxy. The professor gave a slow, mocking smile. A species that barely learned to control its own planet now believes it deserves place among civilizations that have traveled the stars for millennia. Several alien students exchanged amused glances, and Sarthal's voice grew colder. The truth is far simpler. He raised one claw and tapped the holographic display again. Images of early human rockets launching from Earth appeared. Crude machines compared to modern starships. Humans did not earn their place in space through superiority. They clawed their way upward through desperation. The professor turned to face the class fully now, his four glowing eyes sweeping across the tiers. They are physically unimpressive, emotionally unstable, and technologically primitive. A few students nodded slowly. To many advanced civilizations, the statement sounded logical. Sarthal straightened his massive frame. Frankly, he said, voice heavy with disdain, it is remarkable that humans managed to leave their planet at all. A soft ladder echoed through the chamber. The professor allowed it to continue for a moment. Then he spoke again, more quietly. During the Outer Colony conflicts, my fleet encountered human soldiers for the first time. The ladder faded as students focused on him again. Crude armor, inefficient weapons. He flexed one of his claws slowly, but they believed they were warriors. His eyes gleamed faintly. They were wrong, Doug. Sarthal paused, letting the tension grow inside the silent hall. Then he said it. I killed one myself. The words fell into the room like a blade striking metal. A few students leaned forward immediately. Others stiffened in their seats. The professor did not hide the pride in his voice. The creature charged directly at me, he said. No strategy. He let out a low laugh. Just primitive aggression. The holographic board behind him flickered again, displaying the image of a human soldier standing in smoke and debris. Sarthal pointed at the figure. This, he said calmly, is the kind of species the Galactic Council allowed into interstellar society. His lip curled slightly. A fragile animal from a chaotic world. A species barely evolved beyond survival instinct. He turned away from the image with clear contempt. Humans believe they belong among the stars. The professor out across the classroom once more. But in truth, he said slowly, they are simply another primitive civilization that has not yet realized how small it truly is.